Welcome everyone to this Alma session on troubleshooting and CDI. My name is Lieve Rotiers and I work as part of the CDI development team. And I'm going to help you a little bit in understanding CDI and how to troubleshoot. Let's first look at the agenda for today. First, I'm going to briefly talk about some key CDI concepts. You're probably already very familiar with these, but you'll need them during the troubleshooting. So I do a very brief recap. And then I'll focus on the main thing for today, which will be CDI troubleshooting. I'll discuss how to troubleshoot issues in CDI by using a number of frequently asked support questions that we've received, and I'll provide help with you on doing your own troubleshooting in CDI using these questions. So let's first look at the CDI key concepts. First of all, I want to introduce two types of searching. When a user searches Primo to get CDI results, there's two types of searches that they can perform. The first is what we call the filtered search, where they get results back that are available in full text in the library. And you can see that in each of the search results because there's a green indication that says full text available. Text can be different, of course, can be customized, but this is what the user will see. The second type of search is what we call the expand search, where part of the results are still available in full text and get the green indication, and others have the indication no full text, are not available online in the library. So typically the first search that the user does when they enter Primo is what we call a filtered search, before they actually click on the expand beyond library collections. Some customers, however, also can use the expand search as their default, their first search, providing in that case the user with the option to filter by online availability afterwards. So how does this filtered search and expand search work in CDI? Now let's have a look at what CDI records are shown. First of all, in the filtered search, what will happen is that CDI will return all records that are active for full text in Alma. So everything that you activate for full text in Alma automatically becomes part of the filtered search. The expand search returns the same records, everything that you have activated for full text in Alma, plus all the records from collections that you've activated for search in Alma. This is a new type of activation that was introduced for CDI. So activation for search, something to keep in mind, just a brief reminder, is only useful for content that you don't have available in full text, but you do want to have available to your users in the expand search. All right, so this was the filtered and the expand search in Primo. Now let's look at how you activate collections in Alma. So they will be included in the filtered search. So this is a little bit different for databases versus selective or aggregator types of electronic collections. For databases, a database is active in Alma in case it has a database level URL and an unsuppressed BIP record. So this means the database is active in Alma. And a selective or aggregator electronic collection is active in case it has a an active full text service, and it has at least one active portfolio, as well as having unsuppressed BIP records. So this is how your full text activation in Alma works for all the collections that are available in CDI. Now let's look at a little bit more CDI terminology, and that's related to linking. So how does linking work in CDI? There's two types of linking available in CDI as there were in Primo Central. One method is called Linkresolver and the other method is called link in record. In case of the Linkresolver, the actual links to the full text for the records from CDI are created by the Linkresolver. And they're based on the full text activations that you had in Alma, and the OpenURL, that is a special type of URL, is used to pass the metadata, the information about the CDI record, to Alma. So OpenURL is kind of like a transport mechanism. But the Linkresolver is responsible for creating the full text links. This is different in the linking record method, where links are created by just using the link, the full text link in the CDI records. So these are the two types. In the linking record types of links, we also include some links that are actually created by the Primo link templates. So this is in case there's a little institution parameter, a token, or some kind of a user ID that needs to be passed in the link. In that case, Primo will create the link. But it's not handled by Alma, so we also treat that as a linking record type of link. The last slide on the CDI terminology is just a few more ideas about how CDI works for searching and for full text rights. So if we look at the rights for specific electronic collections in CDI, there's two types of rights you can have. Either, and that's the case for most of the collections in CDI, you can search them for free, and then the indication will say free. It means you don't need a subscription to actually search the records in CDI. Collections that are not directly indexed from the provider also are marked as free. These are available via alternative data sources, so the records come from alternative collections. Another type of search right is subscription. This is important because you cannot activate these collections unless you have a subscription agreement with the provider. You have to actually pay or have a subscription agreement with the provider to be able to search the content in these CDI electronic collections. Examples are, for example, Scopus and Web of Science. And then we also have different types of CDI full text rights. So how are you entitled to get to the full text for a collection? And that here we have three types of rights. We have subscription via the Linkresolver, which means that you control the full text rights via activation of full text portfolios on Alma, which means you can do cherry picking. You can activate a few of the portfolios, and for those you will get full text rights in CDI. Or we also have what we call subscription on collection level, which means the whole collection, all of its content is marked as full text available when it's activated in Alma. And we also have a third type of CDI full text rights, which is open access, which behaves as subscription collection level. Okay, so this is the CDI terminology I wanted to refresh. Let's now go to our troubleshooting. So now I will discuss how to do some troubleshooting in CDI. And as I mentioned, I'm going to do this based on the following 5 questions that we received from support on issues and questions that you have regarding CDI. I want to also just say that keep in mind that this troubleshooting is not required when you submit a Salesforce case or when you send questions to CDI info. It is useful for us, and if you want to do this, it can improve your understanding of CDI, and in that sense, we wanted to offer this session, but it's not required. Let's look, before we start and look at these different questions, some things to keep in mind. So first of all, when you're troubleshooting in Primo, we recommend to sign into Primo because some of the collections are available only to sign-in users. This is in case the search rights are a subscription. So if you're looking for these collections that you've activated and you need to be signed in, this could be a cause why you're not actually finding the records. Also, if you're looking for collections that you've activated for search, there's no full text available in Alma, make sure you use the expand beyond the library collection option. Otherwise, these collections, the records from these collections will not show up. Another thing to keep in mind is that there's often, and you'll see that in the slides that will follow, many ways to do troubleshooting, and it may be necessary to check more than one thing before you actually get to the cause of the issue. Another last thing I want to mention here is that we are continually working on adding more troubleshooting tools for CDI. For example, the activation source, which is not always available currently in all of our CDI records. We're working on to make sure that we have this information by the end of 2020. This will make it easier to determine which activations you have and what is the source of a record you found in CDI. I'll come back to this in a minute when we go to the questions. Okay, so this is the first of our 5 questions. So this is about finding records for a specific Alma collection when you go to Primo and you do a search. So the question is here is, how can I find a CDI record for a specific Alma collection that I activated for full text or for search? So you want to make sure, you want to check in this case, whether your activation in Alma is working correctly in CDI. Before we go to the solution here, just want a brief reminder that it takes up to 72 hours between an activation in Alma and actually seeing it in your CDI results. So that's something to keep in mind. But here we go from the assumption that the activation in Alma is more than 72 hours before my actual troubleshooting. All right, so the first thing to do in this case, if you want to find out if your activation in Alma was successful, is you search for the collection in Alma, and in the electronic collection editor, there is a code which is very important. It's kind of a connector between CDI and Alma, and that is what we call the provider package code, or short name for it is DPID. And we also call it CDI collection ID. So you can see that here in the screenshot below, and there may be one, there may be several separated by a comma. But this is the code you need to copy or write down. And then the next thing you do is you will need Primo. So you go to your Primo discovery and perform a search. Any search will do. This only serves as a purpose to actually create a URL that you can then change and use as the basis for the next step in the next slide. So what you do, you change the URL that was showing up in the top bar of your Primo discovery, and you change this URL. You'll find in the URL that there is a section which says query equals any, comma, contains, and then the search term that you used. In my example, it was malware, so you'll see that query equals any contains malware. Now you change that so that the string now says, or that part of the URL now says query equals DPID, comma, contains, and then the DPID value you copied from Alma. In our case, that was CZN. So you see below the example, the URL of your original search, which searched just by using a search term, and the second one, the one that was changed to say that I want to search a DPID that has CZN. If you have multiple DPIDs, any of them will be okay. So once you've made the change to the URL in your browser, you can execute it by pressing Enter. And then you will get records that are affiliated with this Alma electronic collection. So this is a way in which you can find records for a collection. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that this DPID search is available for not for all collections in CDI that have a DPID in the records and where full text rights are calculated on collection level at the moment. So where you have subscription collection level. For collections where the full text rights are based on the active portfolios in Alma, which is title level, what we call title level rights, we're adding the DPIDs to the CDI records, and DPID searching will be available by the end of 2020. So we're not completely there yet, but after our reload, we will have these DPIDs, and you will find records for the collections, for all collections that you've activated in Alma. Okay, so this is the first question. I want to add here that if you start your flow of troubleshooting a little bit differently, and you say, I already have a record from a collection and I want to find other records, you can use another mechanism, and that is by searching by PNX record ID. So how do you do that? You take an existing PNX record ID, you take out the last part, and then you use a star for truncation, as in the example here. So here you search for CDI Skillsoft books. You take out the number that comes, the record number that comes afterwards, and you'll find books from the same provider. So this is a little summary of our first question: how to find records for a specific Alma collection. So first of all, you look for the DB-ID in Alma and search for it in Primo. And if you already have a record from a collection, you can search by the beginning of the record ID using truncation. One last thing I wanted to mention here is that we're adding DB-ID searching in the Alma Advanced Search as part of the December release. So that also makes it easier for you, if you have a DB-ID, to find the collection, the electronic collection in Alma. Okay, so this was our first question. Let's look at the second one. The second one is kind of the opposite. You're in CDI and you want to know why you're getting a specific record in your search results. So this is about checking which collection is causing a specific record to appear in CDI, either as a full text available record in the filtered search or as a no full text record in the expand search. So here there's different options, and I want to say here that this was a little bit easier in Primo Central, where we didn't have merged records, but we had grouped records, and record IDs were easier to search for. And I know a lot of our customers actually used these methods when doing troubleshoot. So it's a little bit trickier in CDI, but again, we're working on our troubleshooting options, and in the meantime, we want to give you different ways in which you can find why a particular record is showing up and what collection in Alma, the activation of a collection actually triggered it to show up. So let's look at ways in which you can find out. So first of all, the first option you have to check why a record is appearing and what electronic collection it's affiliated with is by checking how it links. So now there's two ways in which you can link in CDI. One is linking records and the other is a link resolver. So first let's look at the link resolver. So in case it's a link resolver record, you go to the full view of the record and you will see that the link to the collection will say view item in, and then you see the collection name. And this collection name is actually why it's showing up. You will never get a link for a collection that you haven't activated in Alma, that you're not entitled to link to. So this is the first way, and this works for linking record type of collections. Now, note that in some cases, the text will say view full text in collection and not have the collection name. This is because we're still adding an instead of this stock text, instead of this default text, we're still adding collection names to all of these links. And that's also happening in the next months. You've seen that it starts appearing much less frequently, so that's something we are working on. Let's look at how to check the source of a record via the linking for OpenURL types of links, so for link resolver types of links. In case it's a link resolver, it's actually easy because the collections that are activated in Alma will be shown in the View It section. So for every collection that you've activated in Alma, you see you'll see the link appear in the full view. So that's another way in which you can find which activation triggered this record to appear. Okay, so let's look at option 2. The second option is to look at the source information in the record full display. So you go to the full display and you see source, and then it will tell you which collection in Alma you've activated that triggered this record to appear. Now, this is available currently for all collections that have a DB-ID and where the rights are calculated on collection level. It's not yet available for collections where the subscription is based on activations in Alma, in the link resolver. So this is again something that we are is part of our loading project and will be available by the end of 2020. Now there's one third option that I wanted to mention, and that is you can look at the record ID or PNX ID. This is the method that was most commonly used, I believe, by customers when searching Primo Central. So how do you check the record ID for a record in CDI? There's two methods. The first one is that you can look at the browser URL in the records full display, and you can recognize the record ID by looking at this section of the URL that says doc ID equals and then a string. And that string is actually the record ID for that particular record in CDI. You can also use a Primo PNX bookmarklet that was developed by one of our customers. There's a link to this bookmarklet. So that actually puts the record ID or the PNX ID at the top of the brief result for each of the records that are returned. So now there's a caveat here. You need to explain a little bit what happens here for CDI. So this method works very nicely for records that are not part of a merged record. And also in case the record comes from a collection where we have provider coverage. That means that the provider gave us data that we ingested into the CDI index. So it does not work for alternative coverage. Let's say you've activated a collection that's not indexed in CDI, like let's say EBSCO. Then you won't see EBSCO in the doc ID. It also does not work in case of what we call records affected by the match and merge. So records that are typically merged, like articles and books, are available from different providers. In that, if a record is part of such a merged record, the record ID is randomly selected from the set of the participants in CDI, so it's not necessarily the one that you are looking for. So in this case, the method does not work as it did in Primo Central. So it's useful, but it's only useful in some of the cases. It's not a full solution here. Okay, so if you have found a PNX record ID, then you can take the first part of it. The prefix is what we call it. So the first part of the PNX record ID, in this case, it's called its nexus, for example. And you can search that in Alma, and then you will be able to find what electronic collection activation is triggering this record to show up in your Primo search results. Let's look at the summary of this second troubleshooting question. How can you check which collection is causing a specific record to appear in CDI? Now, there's three different methods that we can go. We can check the linking, we can check the record source, and we can check the record ID. Again, each with its pros and cons and with some limitations at this moment. Let's go to our third question, and this question is about troubleshooting linking issues. So the question here is, how does linking work in CDI, and how can I debug linking issues? Let's have a look. So as I mentioned before, there's two types of linking in CDI. There is either linking via the link in the record, and there is also linking via the link resolver. They look a bit different. This is a screenshot with some modified text. So so that's what you see here. Now let's look at something else that's important in linking. So in CDI, we have a process which is called match and merge. And match and merge is intended to make sure that you don't have duplication when your users find a result in CDI. Content in CDI typically comes, at least for some of our content, from a variety of sources. That includes primary publishers, content aggregators, open access repositories, and we want to make sure that only one record appears for a given citation. So match and merge is a process which controls which records can and cannot be combined into what we call composite records or merged records. Now, if linking happens for a merged record, we have potentially different candidates of links. And you have defined a priority to define what will happen for the link. So first case is where all of the participants in the that you are entitled to contribute to a merged record using the same linking method. So there's two records, they're merged, and the result, and both of them actually have full text linking via the Linkresolver. In case of if this is the case, then the link, the OpenURL link will be used, and Alma will show the services that are active. Another scenario is where the two records that are participating in the merged record are both linking via the link in the record. In that case, the best available link in the record will be displayed. And what we mean by this is that links are prioritized, and the ones with the best metadata will become, or the best linking will be offered. So this, for example, if it's an open access link, it will be deprioritized versus one that is for paid content. That's a change we did recently. Now, this is case one. All of the participants have the same type of linking. Now we look at case two, where some of the participant records contributing to a merged record are linking via the Linkresolvers and other via the link in the records. So if we have a link in records, then that will be prioritized over an OpenURL. However, we do not take into account if one of them is open access and the other is an OpenURL, the OpenURL one will win. So when we prioritize link in records, but we will not prioritize the open access if paid content is available. So if a link in, for example, if a link in records link exists, but it's open access, and there is no link in record for subscribed content, then the Linkresolver link will be displayed. So we have a hierarchy. Link in record is higher than OpenURL, but we do not do this for, we prioritize paid content over non-paid content, open access. So this is how linking works in case of merged records. Let's look at troubleshooting linking problems. Now you've had a little bit of background on linking. I'm going to focus on Linkresolver linking troubleshooting, because for link in records, it's fairly easy. If it's a link in records, you just, what happens behind the scenes in CDI is you take the link that is available in the vendor record and you provide that in your full record display. So that's simple. Now for OpenURL, there's more points of failure. So I wanted to explain a little bit more how you can do troubleshooting for Linkresolver types of links. So how does the linking work in case of a Linkresolver? We're diving into this a little bit deeper. And so what you have is you start from a CDI record, which has metadata. And the metadata that we use comes from the PNX Addata section. So the PNX Addata section will be used to populate the OpenURL, and that can be populated with all kinds of metadata: ISSN, ISBN, article title, book or journal title, date, start page, volume, issue, authors. All of these make it into the OpenURL, and that OpenURL is sent to Alma. Alma matches the OpenURL metadata with its active portfolios and tries to find a match. It does that by using either ISSN or ISBN, and that's the preferred option for matching. Or if there's no ISBN or ISSN, it tries to use book or journal title metadata. So the end result is that it finds an active portfolio. It of course also takes into account coverage information like date, volume, and issue, or date, month, and day, year, month, and day. And then and the end result of this matching is that Alma services are shown in the Primo view it, and links are created by Alma. And you click on it, the Alma target parser kicks in. So this is how OpenURL linking works. So let's show you what you can check here in this flow. So the first thing you do is if you have a record that has a problem with linking and it links via the OpenURL, you look at the PNX Addata section. And there's two mechanisms, two ways in which you can do that. You can either use the Primo PNX bookmarklet and click on the hyperlinked PNX ID. In this case, it's marked here in orange. Or you can just go to the full view of your record and add a string at the end of the URL, end of the browser URL. So you add and show PNX equals true. Make sure that you use this exact same string as what's listed here, because it's case sensitive. Once you do that, you get essentially all the data about the CDI records in what we call the PNX. And what's important for OpenURL linking is the added data section. So that's typically at the end of your PNX. So this added data section has all kinds of metadata. In this case, it's a book record, and it has ISBN, EISBN, author information, a book title. All of this is sent in the OpenURL to Alma. And the matching rules we use is first we match by ISSN or ISBN, then we match by book title, journal title, or title, and then we use the date, volume, and issue, and month and day information and year to check the coverage. So if you want to really look deeply at what's happening, you could check the OpenURL that is sent to Alma. So how do you do that? It's a little bit, it looks very technical, but it's really not that hard. You have to use a Chrome browser to do it. And then, so you go to the full display of a record using a Chrome browser. You type F12, and then you do Control F5 to refresh the page. You'll get a lot of text, but you can ignore almost all of it. You just have to make sure that you go to the Network tab and choose All, and that's marked here. And then you type in the filter, you type OpenURL. This is for Alma customers. I'll have a slide for Primo V. It's slightly different. It's very similar, but a little bit different. So you search for OpenURL, and then you will get the OpenURL, which is, and you can see exactly what is being sent to Alma in the OpenURL. So this is an example of such an OpenURL that I captured. So it points to a specific Alma or SFX environment. In this case, it's an SFX environment, and it contains all the information from the added data section and sends that to Alma. So in this case, there is an ISBN, there is an EISBN. The OpenURL only allows sending one ISBN and EISBN in the standard. So that's why, even though there were multiple ISBNs in the added data, you only see these two in the OpenURL. You also see a book title. You see some more information. So once you know what ISBN was sent to Alma, you can use the search in Alma to search for the ISBN by using the option electronic portfolios and ISBN. So you search for that, and you find, in this case, the book in Alma, and you can then check and see what is the portfolio activation and what is going on here in terms of activations. All right, so this is a summary on the link. One more step before I complete. So this is how you troubleshoot, how you check the OpenURL in Alma. For Primo V, the mechanism is exactly the same. So you go to the full display of a record in Chrome, you type F12, Control F5, and then in the Network tab, you search for PNX S instead of OpenURL. So the search term is not OpenURL. There is, and I'll come back to this at the end of this session, there is a document actually explaining the troubleshooting. It has nice screenshots for both Alma and Primo V. So this is what it is for Primo V. Okay, so let's look at the summary of the third question on troubleshooting Linkresolver questions. What can you do to troubleshoot linking problems, especially for OpenURL? You check the PNX Addata section to see what metadata is being sent by CDI? Is something missing, and is that why there's a problem with the linking? You then check the OpenURL, and you check the Alma title and portfolio activation. Okay, so this is how you can troubleshoot linking. Let's go to our fourth question, and that is, how do I troubleshoot differences in full text availability between the brief and the full display? This is a problem that we get reported to CDI support. And the question we typically get is, why do I see full text online indication in my brief display of my record, but it changes to no full text in the full display, and I don't see any full text links anymore? So let's look at this problem in a little bit more detail and see if there's any things that you can do, or what are the causes of this issue. So what's happening here? Initially, a record is shown in the brief display with indication that it's available in full text or available online. So this is a screenshot. You see it as a green indication, full text available. But then when the user clicks on the title and goes to the full display, the indication changes to no full text. So this is a problem. This is something that should not happen. And why does it happen? It happens because Alma real-time availability works behind the scenes and tries to find a match with an active portfolio for this record, and that fails. That process fails. So, what is Alma real-time availability? It's a check on the fly that Alma that happens when you go from a full display, from a brief display to a full display of a record. So it's really behind the scenes. We're checking availability in Alma, and something goes wrong here. Let's look at some potential causes of this problem, and if there is any solution that you can do that yourself. So first of all, you can see there's different reasons why this problem can happen, and so there's different ways in which you can solve it. The first thing that happens is it can be a problem with what we call CDI rights. So in Alma, there's a publishing profile. That publishing profile makes sure that all the activations in Alma are published to CDI, and CDI picks that up, harvests this information, and does what we call our CDI rights calculations. So maybe something, and that's sometimes an issue. Maybe there's a problem with the publishing of these activations in Alma to CDI. And the only thing you can really do here is to report this problem to Ex Libris. We will check your publishing profile, we'll check your holdings files, and check why you're not getting the right full text activation. There is clearly a mismatch here between what Alma has and what CDI has. So that's a cause of the issue. So that's one potential reason. The second is that there is a mismatch in metadata between CDI and Alma. CDI record has an ISBN, and Alma actually has a different ISBN or a different book or journal title. So again, this is something that should be reported to Ex Libris via Salesforce. There's nothing really that you can do. You can do some troubleshooting if you want to, and I explained how to get and look at the Add a Data section and how to look at the OpenURL and then do a search in Alma. Keep in mind, so it doesn't happen very often for ISSNs and ISBNs. It is more frequent for title information. So we're also investigating some more fuzzy matching between CDI and Alma, but that's longer term. If you find such cases, then you should report them to Ex Libris via Salesforce. Now, there's a third reason why this can happen, which is related to a configuration option in CDI. And here you can make a change. The configuration option is called "We subscribe to only some titles in the collection." And if you set it to no, then the whole collection becomes automatically set to full text available, and you'll get the green indication for all the records in the collection. Now, if there are missing portfolios in Alma, or you have partial activations in Alma, then you have a problem. So This issue happens only in case of Linkresolver type of linking. It doesn't happen for linking the record. But it's so it's if there's missing portfolios in the Alma community zone, or if you haven't activated all of the portfolios and you set this option to no, so you say you don't subscribe selectively, but you subscribe to everything, then this can happen. And in this case, what you can do is to change the configuration option to yes. That will make sure that you don't have this behavior in CDI. So a small summary of this question. What the question is, why do I see full text online in the brief and it changes to no full text in the full display? So the answer really is that there's different causes to the problem. Most of them need to be reported to Xlibris, and Xlibris needs to make a change to fix this issue. This could be a rights issue, could be a metadata issue. In both cases, Xlibris needs to make a change. If this is caused by the CDI configuration option of selective subscriptions, then you can change the configuration and it will, in this case, if this is the cause, it will solve the problem. Okay, so this concludes the different questions that I had on trouble that we received from support that are that I wanted to handle in this troubleshooting. I hope I gave you some handles on how CDI works and how you can go about to do troubleshooting here. I also want to, as a last slide, show you some information on how to get support in case of problems and where you can find documentation. Now, if we talk about documentation, we published recently a document that's really about troubleshooting tips and tricks, and that can be found in this link here. So this explains very much the same things that I described here. So if you want to, you can use that and do it step by step at your own pace. There's also a link to all the CDI documentation available in our content corner. If you have for support and questions, if you have general questions, feel free to email them at cdiinfo@xlibrisgroup.com. And if you have a specific question about your environment or you have a problem, one of the problems that we discussed earlier in this troubleshooting section, then you're invited to open a support case, and then we can handle them via Salesforce. Okay, so thanks everyone for attending this session, and you can contact us at CDI Info, or you can contact us via support.